Picture this. I did everything right. I got myself a university degree in business marketing and ticked off the entire checklist of what's needed to be set up in life. And yet, here I am, juggling 2 retail jobs just to stay afloat. One barely pays and the other barely schedules me. Even working full-time, it's always rent versus groceries. Some days it's just bread and milk or whatever's left in the pantry. And here's the thing, this isn't just my story, this is Gen Z's story. We are living through one of the toughest financial climates in modern history. Rent that was just $280 a week is now $450. Let that sink in. I earn more than triple the minimum wage and I still can't afford to live. I know what you're thinking. Every generation says this. And just work harder. But the numbers tell us a different story. Nearly half of us had our jobs or hours slashed during the pandemic. 6 in 10 can't save a cent for the future. And only 15% of us believe we'll own a home in the next 5 years. And 80% are terrified that rent prices will price us out completely. We've survived economic crashes, a global pandemic, a mental health crisis, and now we're watching AI threaten to take our jobs before we even really started our careers. So how did a generation that was promised success end up here? Today, we unpack in Gen Z's financial reality. Across housing, unemployment, and inflation, to unpack one thing, is Gen Z really the poorest generation in modern history? Let's find out. Before we go any further, let's get clear on who we're actually talking about. Gen Z's oldest members are hitting 29 right now. In the US and UK, they make up around 1/5 of the entire population, roughly the same size as the baby boomers. But in places like Nigeria, India, that numbers explode to over a quarter of the entire country. And this generation is different, in some pretty striking ways. They are more environmentally conscious, drink and smoke less, and are less likely to be coupled up. They're glued to social courses through their phone, and yet somehow they socialize less. Just 38 minutes a day on average, compared to a full hour for millennials. Now sure, look at the Gen Z headliners, like Billie Eilish, Zendaya, and Mr. Beast. And it looks like this generation is thriving. But for the everyday Gen Zers, adulthood is landing right in the middle of a global economic chaos. This world is buried in debt, populations are aging, growth is stalling out. And the fix that the central banks reached for is just to print more money. That didn't just cause inflation, it sent asset prices soaring while wages just sat there. So technically, you might be earning more, but practically, you can afford less. And housing says it all. Decades ago, a home cost around 3 times your annual income, but today it's closer to 10. And for Gen Z, the ladder to financial stability isn't just to climb. It's about how society actively tries to push you back. And nothing captures that better than the housing crisis. If you've been on social media lately, you've seen the memes that we are never going to own a home. That's funny until you realize that 34% of Gen Z actually believe that not in 10 years, not in 20 years, let that sink in. In 2022, the average first-time homebuyer turned 36 before buying, and more young adults aren't leaving their nest at all. They are just staying at their parents' house just to survive. In the US, 18 to 29-year-olds living with their parents has jumped 87% since 2000. And in Australia, it's a dropping 177% increase since 2016 alone. And now, let's talk about numbers. In the US, home prices are climbing twice as fast as wages. Affording a home now takes roughly 6 years of income. Boomers needed just 2 or 3. In Sydney, the average home runs $1.6 million. On a single income, that's 14 years of saving every single dollar. No food, no rent, no life just to buy a home. And then, there's the extremes. A rundown 3-bedroom apartment in Paddington sold for $9 million. A 1-bedroom in Bonding Junction listed for $900K. And 2 guys agreed to co-live just to afford it. But here's the twist. Gen Z is actually navigating this market better than you think. In 2022, 30% of 25-year-olds in the US owned homes, and beating Gen X at the same age. And how can they do that? It's because the US snapped up the record low interest rates in 2020 to 2021, embraced remote work, and moved to cheaper cities. Plus, they've got something that no other generation had before at their age, and that's the internet. Instant access to tools, data, and financial information. But don't get it twisted though. This isn't just a win across the board. Millennials got crushed by the 2008 financial crash and missed those low rates windows entirely. And everywhere, sky-high prices are pushing young people to delay marriage, delay kids, and even considering tiny homes. Yes, the kind you can order on Amazon for just under $40,000. It's bleak out there, but some say the job market might be the light at the end of the tunnel. Or is it? If you're between the age of 15 and 24, landing a job isn't given, especially in parts of Europe and Asia. In Spain, youth employment sits at 28%, and in Sri Lanka, it's 27%. Greece, Italy, Sweden all hover around 23%. And in China, over a third of the recent university graduates might be sitting jobless, caught between economic uncertainty and an oversaturated job market. Now, in the West, the picture looks a bit better. Youth unemployment averages around 13%, the lowest it has been since 1991. It sounds like good news, right? But Gen Z isn't buying it. And why? It's because the headline number doesn't tell the whole story. Back in 1994, the US changed how it calculates unemployment. The statistics quietly removed anyone who'd given up job hunting or were stuck working part-time against their wills. Other countries followed suit. So today, low unemployment rate might be hiding just how rough things actually are. Economist Peter Schiff argues that under the old, broader measurements, unemployment today will look much worse than much of the 70s and 80s, and yes, even during those brutal stagflation years. So, how troubled is Gen Z in the job market? It depends who you ask. Some experts say absolutely, they're in real trouble, but others argue that tech leveled the playing field and opened doors to opportunities that no generation had before. And there's truth to that statement. Gen Z had leaned hard into the side hustles, digital gigs, and job hopping to survive. In fact, Gen Zs who switch jobs are pocketing up to 30% more. Wages for young workers are climbing faster than any other age group. Hourly pay for 16 to 24-year-olds in the US jumped 7% in a single year. In the UK, 18 to 21-year-olds saw a 15% bump. In New Zealand, Gen Z wages rose 10%, outpacing the national average. That sounds great, but here's the catch. Gen Z started from such low wages that company could afford to hand out big percentage rises without really moving the needle. So while the jumps looks impressive on paper, plenty of Gen Z are still earning too little to keep up with rent, food, and healthcare. So if Gen Z is hustling, job hopping, and still falling behind, what's actually going on? And there's one word to describe that, and that one word is inflation. Inflation, the quiet killer of Gen Z's financial future. We've all felt the prices creeping up, but for Gen Z, just starting out on entry-level pay, the subtle yet obvious price bumps are not just annoying, it's devastating. Imagine stepping into adulthood right in the middle of the biggest inflation spike since the 1970s. That's not bad luck, that's a full-blown crisis, and Gen Z walked straight into it. In 2022, inflation hit a 40-year high. The pandemic had the supply chains blocked. Goods got pricier, and governments reached for the classic fix, and that's to print more money. In the short term, it kept economies breathing. But in the long term, that flood of cash sent prices exploding. Groceries jumped 8%. Rent, fuel, flights, even education followed right behind. Gen Z had never seen anything like it, and for lots of them, it's a genuine psychological gut punch. Some experts even say that this generation is coming out scarred by it. But here's the harsh truth that nobody tells you. Even when inflation slows down, prices don't go back down. Dropping from 8% to 3%, and things are still getting more expensive. It's just a little bit slower. And that's why your paycheck feels like it's always one step behind. Rewinding to the 70s and 80s, inflation hit 20%, and families simply couldn't survive on one income anymore, so both parents went to work. That single shift changed the entire workforce forever. Now Gen Z is facing a similar dilemma, except with less support and higher stakes. Wages are rising, but nowhere near fast enough to keep up with the pace of the cost of living. And here's the kicker. Some economists argue that real inflation is even worse than what's reported. Governments have quietly changed how it's measured, such as brushing aspects of the home prices under the table, or to make the inflation numbers look better on paper. And the result is that living standards are quietly eroding, and Gen Zs, who's just stepping through the door into adulthood, is feeling it the hardest. So if you're struggling to save, to make rent, or even just to dream about owning a home someday, just remember that you're not alone.